Welcome to this episode of Safe Home Podcast for struggling teens and their families finding their healing path. I'm Beth Syverson, a mom of an 18-year-old son, Joey, who has been struggling for several years with addiction, mental health issues, and suicidal ideation. I am walking beside him as he struggles with his recovery, and I work on my own personal growth and healing. If you'd like to get a hold of us, we would love to hear from you at safehomepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your ideas for topics, or if you have a guest speaker idea or comments about any of our episodes, we'd love to hear from you. We're also on social media, YouTube, and we have a Patreon account. If you're interested in helping to maintain a commercial-free zone here, you can donate a small amount monthly on patreon.com/safehome. So for this episode, it's just going to be me, just me, and me. And I want to share a very interesting story. I think it's interesting. I hope you find it interesting too. I also wanted to just tell this story before I forget some of the details. The gist of the story is, a couple of days ago, I went on a psychedelic trip on purpose. And it was planned, and it was intentional, and it was for the purpose of healing. And so I want to tell you how that came about, how it went, and what I'm going to do about it now. So let me back up and tell you my kind of history and knowledge about psychedelics, where that came from. I love listening to podcasts, and I heard Michael Pollan on some podcast, I don't even know which one, and he was talking about his book, How to Change Your Mind. And Michael Pollan, he wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma and The Botany of Desire. He's kind of a food writer, and maybe a food journalist would be the way to say it. Well, and then he kind of switched over to talking about mushrooms, which is sort of food, but the psychedelic properties of some mushrooms. And then he got into looking into LSD, and I believe he also studied ayahuasca. Anyway, his book, How to Change Your Mind, is all about his different journeys on different psychedelics and what he learned about him. And I was fascinated because in the 50s and 60s, the LSD thing went kind of wrong. It got way out of control into the hands of the public as a party drug. And so the whole thing got shut down. All of the research and interest in the therapeutic properties of LSD or any of the psychedelics got shut down because all of it was made illegal. So do you think, though, that no one did psychedelics because it was illegal? No, of course not. It just went underground. And it put a big crimp in the research and studying of these, what they call plant medicines. In the meantime, between the 1960s and today, there have been people that have been very dedicated to making sure these substances come back, but in a more responsible manner. And there have been really major, well-funded, well-regarded studies, especially of MDMA and psilocybin, which is the chemical in mushrooms. So very soon, hopefully in the next year or 2 or 3, there will be progress made on maybe in some states. Probably California will probably be one of the leaders, maybe Colorado, maybe Oregon, states like that have already legalized cannabis and other things. So look for that coming in a couple of years, the therapeutic use of psychedelics. I'll go into that more when I talk about my own experience, what all that therapeutic part means. Well, anyway, so I heard about Michael Pollan. I read this book, read all about psychedelics, found out that psychedelics really don't kill you. The substances do not kill you. They might kill you indirectly by the stupid stuff you'll do while you're on the substance. Or in my son's case, it caused him to want to kill himself because he wished he could stay on the other side where the psychedelics led him. So it caused suicidality, but it wasn't the drug itself that was dangerous. It was the setting, the lack of preparation that my son had. He just did acid and DMT, which is a very, very strong chemical compound of a psychedelic that makes you have a very fast and intense psychedelic experience. And My son vaped DMT and he took loads of acid at home by himself in his bedroom. That is not the suggested way to manage these plant medicines. These medicines have been around for millennia. If you think of the Native Americans or indigenous people everywhere, they've used ayahuasca, peyote, those kinds of drugs for millennia in the container of a shaman or a guide or a medicine man or some sort of healer that guides the person with this sacred plant medicine, right? In some sort of ceremony, some sort of retreat, some sort of sweat lodge kind of situation. So much, much different than the way my son was using it. And Joey suffered for sure because of that. We almost lost him for sure because he was able to get his hands on this stuff. And I don't think most parents realize you can vape psychedelics. I mean, I was like, what? I thought vaping was just nicotine. Oh, no, 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 no. Cannabis is very commonly vaped and some psychedelics can be vaped. Actually, any substance that can survive being vaporized can be vaped. So just be careful out there. So the day after we put him in the psych hospital, number 1, because he tried to commit suicide, I found out that he had been using psychedelics. The psychiatrist called me back, told me the results of the blood test. The psychedelics don't show up on blood tests though, but Joey told him that he was using LSD. And the psychiatrist was like, what? A 15-year-old kid using LSD? What is going on? So he was pretty concerned about that, as was I. And I freaked out less than I probably would have because I had read that book about psychedelics by Michael Pollan, and I had subsequently kind of been more aware of what's going on in the world of psychedelics. I had seen various episodes on TV or, I don't know, little news clips about psychedelics, and I just was more aware of what they were because of the information that I had learned. So I felt grateful for that. So I knew that the psychedelics wouldn't kill him exactly, but that we really needed to be careful because now Pandora's box was open and his mind was expanded and he has experienced. It opens up your consciousness. It alters your mind and makes it wider. It makes you understand the big picture better. So he had some very negative experiences in his trips, but he also had some very positive experiences where he felt this kind of massive worldwide hug and felt warm and secure and loved and everything was okay. That's how he felt on the trip. And then he recovered from that and got back to reality. He's like, oh, hell no, this sucks. I want to go back. And so he kind of got himself into a cycle of using a lot of LSD and just being unhappy with regular old boring life. So we worked with Joey on that for a long time. I found him an integration circle where he was able to talk about his psychedelic experiences with other people who are also trying to process their experiences. It turns out a major piece of using psychedelics is the integration. If you don't have someone to help you integrate the information you gain from the trip, then it just becomes confusing or traumatic or kind of a waste of this opportunity, really. So we found through friends of friends of friends of friends, thankfully people were willing to talk to me about psychedelics because it is illegal. There are people that are trying to help people integrate what they learned. So we took Joey to an integration group and he felt very relieved and understood by these people because it's weird to have experienced these very life-changing things and no one else has done it. Joey's kind of felt like separated sometimes from me, I feel, and from, regular old people that haven't experienced that altered state. So he found his people, he found his tribe that could understand him. Then COVID, then they shut down the integration circles. So that was a bummer. So over the years then, I've heard Joey's stories about these psychedelic experiences and hearing the stories in that first integration circle that I went with Joey to. I'm like, I'm not dropping him off to these people that all use psychedelics. I don't know what they're going to be doing. Are they going to hand him something? And so I went to the first time just to listen and make sure he was safe. But then he went a couple more times by himself. So I became more familiar with what people were saying, what it was like. And honestly, I was curious. I was like, whoa, that is amazing. The mind is an amazing thing. And wow, it kind of makes you really think about what's going on. What is this big picture? What's beyond the beyond? What is our consciousness? What is us? What is me? And what is bigger than me? And what is so many questions. So very curious. And as I'm doing more research to try to keep my kids safe and to become more aware of what he's doing, I'm finding out more things about MDMA, which is the pharmaceutical name for the drug ecstasy, which is the party drug, which often is cut with really bad stuff. So ecstasy, not good. MDMA, very good for things like PTSD, depression, addiction, things like that. They have been doing all sorts of studies to find out that these treatments, when done in a therapeutic manner, are extremely effective for those kinds of things that are long-term struggles with people. And here I am, we've done an episode on depression. I have been depressed my whole entire life. I can't remember not being depressed. I recently remembered I was probably in kindergarten or first grade, and my mom said, here, you can pick out whatever stuffed animal you want at the store. And Winnie the Pooh was a big thing back then. And I picked Eeyore. That's the one I picked. Why did I pick Eeyore? I just related to Eeyore so much. I felt like Eeyore all the time. Wah, 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 nobody loves me. Wah. Ah, gosh, I've just had that darkness my whole life. Like, God, I'm not loved. I feel horrible. Nothing is working right all the time. And it became kind of a habit, kind of a way of being that nobody helped me with when I was younger. And I'm not blaming anybody about that, but just, back then in the 70s, people probably weren't paying attention to children's psychological needs as much as they might now. Probably still not very good now. But anyway, so I was Eeyore my whole life, pretty much. And I was like, man, if I could relieve some of this depression, that would be amazing. I've been taking antidepressants since I was in my 20s, and I'm in my 50s now. So decades of antidepressants. And still I'm depressed. So I was just searching for something to help me. And I've done therapy for years, so many different kinds of therapy. I've done brain spotting. I've done holotropic breathwork. I've done EMDR. I have done regular old therapy with so many different therapists and different techniques and different points of view, and still depressed. So when I found out about a person that offers therapeutic psychedelic practice, I was like, I am interested in that. I have no idea if I could even do that, but I'm interested. And it was a person I trust very, very much that was recommending this person. And I'm just going to call the first person Mike that recommended John to me. Both of those names are not the right names, but Mike, I trust with my life. And John was someone that Mike trusted. So there we go. Trust John. Without even meeting John, I trust John. And so I just percolated for like a year thinking about it. Could I ever do that? Could I ever do that? Oh my gosh, that is so out of character for me. I don't know if you remember this from the introductory episode of this podcast, but I have never been drunk in my whole life. I tried smoking weed twice, but I couldn't inhale and it kind of made me feel yucky. So, I am not into substances. The substance I was into was sugar, which I haven't used for 5 years because that got super addictive. But I've not ever been intrigued with any other substances. My foster sisters, when I was a kid, used psychedelics and used a lot of other substances, which made them violent and chaotic and unpredictable. So I was like, nope, I'm not going there. That's terrible and terrifying. Ironic that my son is now involved in those same things that make life really chaotic, not usually violent, but just chaotic. So here I am again in that world. And I've struggled for a long time thinking, God, I do not like my son using psychedelics. Why am I thinking about doing it myself? And believe me, my wife, Jan, had very similar ideas. She's like, what are you doing? Joey's life is being totally challenged by him using these substances, especially psychedelics. Why are you even thinking about this? So it was kind of a tough sell for Jan, for sure. But first, I had to get my mind wrapped around it. I ended up calling John and saying, hey, I am as squeaky clean, nerdy, Pollyanna as you can be, but I'm interested in trying psychedelics. And so he told me all about, the way he does it. I asked lots of questions that Jan was particularly concerned about safety, about addiction, about what if I have a bad trip, that kind of thing. And the thing that made me comfortable was partly because I trusted John, and partly because the way he does it in this therapeutic model that I keep referring to involves 6 therapy sessions, 3 sessions before and 3 sessions after. So you talk through what you want to have happen. You talk through your intentions, what you want to work out, what are you trying to achieve? And then afterwards, you have 3 sessions again. And each of these are separated by a week or so. So it's like a 6-week project. And the actual day of the journey is an all-day affair that John sat with me for. So this is no small thing, no just get some LSD off the street and have a good time for a couple of hours. No, this is extremely intentional. It's guided by this guide, shaman, therapist, whatever you want to call the person that's helping you. And they don't leave you the whole time. They don't leave you because, like I said, psychedelics themselves aren't going to kill you, but the stuff you do while you're on them, they might. You might walk out. You might walk into traffic, or you might, who knows? Your mind is altered. So the therapeutic use of psychedelics involves a sitter, someone sitting with you the whole time. So it's a major job for someone. And this is the model that is coming down through the clinical trials and things, is this model of a couple of therapy sessions before, a long day of sitting with the person, and then a couple of therapy sessions after. So quite a bit different than what Joey was doing. So let me tell you about what I did. So the 3 sessions I had with John before were on Zoom because COVID, and he lives kind of a little far away up in the mountains. So Zoom works out just fine. So told him my life story, the quick version, told him told him about the depression that I was trying to alleviate, told him about that just core sadness that I have tried so many different ways to get rid of, to get in touch with, or to get an answer to, and just stuck, just feeling so stuck. And secondarily, I wanted to connect with Joey kind of on some ethereal level, some psychic level. Actually, in the holotropic breathwork, I did connect with him. I talked about that in the psychedelics episode, I think episode 5. And I saw Joey in that. I think that was called a journey too. That one just uses your breath, just in case you don't know what holotropic breathwork is. It's just your breath. You kind of hyperventilate yourself in this secure environment as well. The way I did it was on Zoom with other people and with a guide talking, and then talking you through it, and then doing lots of really loud music. And so it kind of takes you on a journey. So I saw Joey on that journey doing breath work. And he says, Mom, I don't want you to chase me. I want you to follow me. So still trying to figure out exactly what that means. But I feel like I am, after that, I feel like I did shift. I quit chasing him, trying to grab him, trying to control him, trying to catch him. And instead, I've been, like I say in the intros, every podcast, I say I'm walking beside him as he struggles and as I struggle with my own personal growth and healing. So I'm following him, walking beside him, walking with him instead of chasing after him. So I wanted to connect with him on a level like that again, to try to get some guidance, because Joey's having really hard time right now. during this time when I'm getting ready for the psychedelic experience, Joey is having a really tough time, back into the substances big time, feeling really off his meds, not feeling good psychiatrically, just so moody and chaotic. So I really wanted to connect with Joey somehow. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. Unfortunately, I did not connect with Joey. Exactly. I didn't connect with him explicitly during my journey, but I did connect with my depression in a big, big way. And I want to talk about it, partly so I don't forget it. So Jan and I drove up to the mountains to see John. Jan had to take 2 days off of work. Thank God she's willing to do that. And it was not super inexpensive either. And of course, insurance would not cover something like this. So I had to go get cash out of the bank, do this whole underground thing, which is, I don't ever break rules. I'm not a risk taker in that way at all. So this is very unusual for me. So I went into it with quite a bit of thought and preparation. So brought our cash, brought our little suitcase because we were going to stay overnight so I could have the day after session in person. Oh, one more thing. I just started my sabbatical. I have a 10-week sabbatical from my church job. So I just have started that. And I purposely put this appointment here at the beginning of the sabbatical because I knew it would take some emotional toil to unravel it and figure it all out afterwards. And I'm very glad I did, because if I had to go back to intensively working right after this, I would be like, whoa, my brain is like still a little bit spinning around. So it was good timing. But Jan had to take a couple of days off of work, but she was super supportive. She gets an A++ for supporting her wife doing this weird underground thing. She would say, I don't want you doing drugs. And I said, I have been doing drugs for 3 decades and it's not working. I want to try something else. I want to try something else that people say really, really, really helps. So I think that's what changed her mind. I am doing drugs. Why is this drug that's prescribed by my psychiatrist different than this other drug, which is a natural substance, the one I took anyway? Why is one legal? One is pushed, basically. So many people are on antidepressants right now. It's ridiculous. And then the other one is underground. Why? So hopefully that will change eventually. Anyway, so we drove up to the mountains. It was beautiful up there. And just got to look around, saw our little apartment where we were going to stay over the night, and got kind of acclimated, and then kicked Jan out. She had to be gone for the day. And so she had to go into town. And I was there with John and just checked in quickly. And then, and I should explain the journey room. He has this kind of an apartment on the end of his house, right? And the main room he turned into a journeying room with an altar and with a mattress and cozy blankets and pillows everywhere. And it was bright yellow walls, just extremely bright, and with big windows where you could see the mountains and his beautiful backyard and the birds. Actually, when we first arrived, the first thing I saw was a vulture in the tree right above us. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? What kind of omen is this? But evidently the vultures are always there. But I still thought it was a good omen actually. Like, okay, the vulture's here to take away all of my stuff that needs to die, right? Kind of like when you draw the death card in the tarot. Like, okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to die necessarily, but maybe a part of me that needs to die is going to die. So I'm like, okay, vultures, get ready to take my stuff. Incidentally, the next morning, I woke up to a giant hawk on top of his shed in his backyard, and its wings outspread. It was giant, like the width of the shed. And it just sat there for a couple of minutes, sunning itself, I guess, drying out his wings. And I thought, wow, okay, so the vulture on the morning that I come, and the hawk stretching out its wings on the next morning. Gonna have to really think about all that. So, okay, so here we are. Jan has left. I'm here, checked in with John, and he hands me this little ceramic bowl with 4 capsules full of mushrooms ground up. So I chose to use psilocybin. and which is magic mushrooms. And so he gave it to me in capsule form, little ground up mushrooms. And there were 4. And he says, well, you can take as many as you want, and we can give you more if you need more. He left so I could just have some time to myself. And I sat there staring at these capsules going, what in the hell am I doing? What am I doing? Ay, ay, ay. Just the gravity of it was like, okay, well, here I am. I've prepared for this. I've worked really hard. I've thought about this for years. I've done the work. I've done the preparation, and I'm ready. So pop those 3 capsules down. And then I got scared because he left the room. He was right in his house, like right in the next room. But I'm like, ooh, what if I, fall apart before he gets back? But nothing happened. And it takes like 45 minutes for it to take effect. So I'm sure knew that. So anyway, he came back and I'm like, okay, I don't feel anything. And so we just chit chatted and I don't know, talked about some of the stuff that I wanted to work on, but nothing serious, just waiting for the medicine to start working. And it just didn't work. It was like nothing. I feel nothing. I see nothing. I know Joey said that his vision goes really weird, like very colorful, kind of like, psychedelic posters you see or album covers. That's what you see when you're on psychedelics a lot of times, but evidently not me because I wasn't getting any of it. I wasn't getting any flares or any brightness or anything. I'm like, okay. So I took 2 more capsules. I'm like, okay, let me see how this goes. And we waited another 15 minutes, nothing. And I said, are there people this just does not work for? And he said, nope, we just need to get more on board. So he had given me a pretty conservative amount because I'd never been drunk before. Usually medicines kind of hit me hard. So I usually don't need to take as much as most people take. So those were kind of the assumptions we were starting from. So we were starting very conservatively. But time is of the essence because, you want to make good use of this trip. I made this trip up to the mountains and I was here for this trip. I wanted to have a trip, So we decided to take some more. So he brought me some powder that he mixed into a tea. So I drank that. Then that still didn't work. And I'm starting to feel like a complete failure at this point. And like, I guess this just doesn't work for me. I guess I'm not going to get what I need here. I guess it's just not going to work. Then he said, no, don't give up. Don't give up. And he brought me actual mushrooms. So then I chomped on some mushrooms and still wasn't feeling very much. But then I started feeling very kind of logy and a little sleepy, my head was getting heavy. So I laid down and he left because we thought, maybe I'm just feeling self-conscious. So he left to the other room right next to my room, left the door open a little bit and I could just call his name and he would run and come back to me. So then I did feel a little bit less watched, less like a zoo animal, just like, okay, all right, let me see what's going to happen. So I laid down and he did say that the antidepressant I'm on, Wellbutrin, when you are on Wellbutrin and try to use psychedelics or psilocybin anyway, it doesn't have as great of an effect. It's not as intense and it doesn't last as long. And also he said it makes you sleepy. So yeah, that's what it did to me. It made me really sleepy, but I didn't sleep, but it made me very kind of like when you're at the dentist and like, you're still there, but you're just kind of loopy. That's where I was. Then I kept saying to myself, well, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right because you're not seeing these vibrant colors. And it's not anything like what Joey was experiencing. Not anything like what Joey was telling me about. But later, John reminded me that Joey was using DMT a lot and LSD, which act very differently than psilocybin. And he was using an incredibly large amount. And he wasn't using it therapeutically. And he wasn't on Wellbutrin. So all of those factors made my experience quite a bit different. But after I just let go and said, all right, well, whatever this is, it's going to be, and I'll just be here for whatever it is. And I'll try to quit beating myself up over it. And, making notes to talk about this with John later, like, how come I feel like a failure using psychedelics? I mean, good night. Why do I blame myself? That's a pattern I have and I'm working on that. So anyway, it's funny that came up. during this experience. So it finally started to kick in. I'm feeling woozy, feeling just weird, just feeling kind of weird. And I closed my eyes, laid down, and I started to see it felt kind of like a film strip. It was not like a psychedelics like I thought I would see, but it was like a film strip, like these roads that I was moving on. It's hard to explain that, like a conveyor belt, like on repeat, just over and over, just running through these roads and paths and train tracks. And the overwhelming feeling I had was, I'm all alone. Where is everyone? I'm just here by myself. And I keep getting left. I had this strong feeling of being abandoned, of being left, of being like, I remember these train track kind of images, and the train would just swoosh by me. I'm like, hello, I'm here. Can you stop? I'm here. Why aren't you stopping? And this horrible feeling of like, God, nothing is for me. All of this is passing me by. Why don't I get it? What's wrong with me? That this is the feeling I've had my whole life. Why, not why me, like, but like, I guess I don't get any of these goodies. I guess it's not for me. And I felt that so strongly. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And kind of was in this half sleep mode. Every once in a while, I have no idea how often, because time sort of stops and I had no idea what time it was or how much time had passed. But John would come in every once in a while and say, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I'd be like, I feel so abandoned and I'm just so sad. He goes, okay, you're on your journey. Keep going. And I'm sure he could see it in my eyes and my speech and whatever. He could tell that I'm like in the middle of having something happening. So he didn't try to fix it at that point or anything. He just said, okay, you're on your journey. Keep going. I'm right here. And so he stepped out to the next room again, and I just kept going. And I had, I don't know how long, maybe an hour of that, 2 hours. I have no idea, of just processing these roads that just kept going like an escalator that just never ended. Very long road that just kept coming. It was not, I'm not a real visual person. So maybe that's why, or maybe because I didn't take a very large dose of psilocybin, but it was not extremely detailed, or it was more vague, more symbolic, I think. But the general impression was sad and lonely and feeling left. So if I were not in a therapeutic setting, if I was just by myself and I woke up from that and be like, well, fuck, that was horrible. I do not like this. But the way I did it was with John's help. And so at a certain point, I sat up. Maybe I can't remember why I sat up, but I was maybe kind of transitioning to a different phase of my experience or whatever. So I sat up, and so he popped his head in and said, oh, hi, you're sitting up. And do you want to talk about anything? And so then, I don't know how long this took either, maybe an hour, maybe longer. He helped me talk through what I experienced. And this is where the magic happened. This is where the therapy occurred. This is where everything gelled, and all of the work I've done in my whole life on myself, all of the books I've read, all of the lectures I've heard, all of the work I've done in my own therapy and with all these other modes that I've tried, all of it pulled together and helped this moment here make sense of it all. Okay, so I don't know. I don't want to share every little detail because it's sort of personal, but what happened was these big pieces of my puzzle, this feeling abandoned, this loneliness, this nobody loves me-ness, all started to make sense. I feel like I got a 10,000 foot view of my life. Instead of being down here in it, I was able to see it from the top, and it all started to make sense. I went inward because I didn't get what I needed as a child. My family was very stressed out and young, and my parents were very young when they had us, and they didn't have any tools to deal with anything. So, of course, I didn't get what I needed. It's not their fault. It's not, not anybody's fault. It's just kind of generations of trauma and shame and religion and culture and misogyny all smushed together and created this situation where Beth didn't get what she needed. So what I realized though was that the way I adapted to that situation was the way I survived. I was able to see it as a strength. Me going inward, me being incredibly shy, me being very kind of repressed, reserved, very out of touch with my emotions. That helped me survive. Because if I had let go of the emotions that I had, that would not have gone well at all in this family situation, right? If you can imagine the shame involved and the religiosity, the expectations were such that an outburst of raw emotion would not have gone well and I would not have been safe. So that was a big puzzle piece put together, that I made these choices subconsciously as a very young child to say, okay, well, I guess in order to survive this, I just need to suck it up and just play along and do this thing. But of course, that led to years and years, decades of depression because I've shut off big parts of my life, big pieces of myself. Not separate pieces, but I just was not able to be all of who I was. But now I can because I'm a grown up and I'm not living in that house anymore that I grew up in, and I get to make my own choices. And so anyway, that was a big realization that I was actually really strong subconsciously because I chose to survive by making this shift, and it helped me to survive. It helped me to get through. And now I'm able to rectify that situation and become all of who I am, become more authentic, become more, true to who I am. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And the other big piece was about the intergenerationality of my grief and my sadness. I just felt so deeply, oh God, so many Kleenexes worth of sadness from my mother, from my grandmother, from her mother. And that's about as far as I go. But I know that even before that, there's even more trauma. But those are the women that I kept thinking in my head. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I wore very specific clothing and jewelry to this event because I thought, well, when I look back on this, I don't want to be thinking about myself in schlubby sweatpants or something. So because I knew I should be comfortable, but I wanted to dress nice and look, I don't know, like I wanted to look back on this and remember what I looked like. I don't know why. Why is that important? But I wanted it to be special, I guess. So I dressed in some of my favorite clothes and I put on jewelry from people. One was a set of bracelets made out of piano wire that my mother gave me. One was a necklace that Jan just gave me for Christmas. And one was a set of earrings that my friend Beth gave me. So I had my three women on my body, right? My wrist, my neck, my ears, all were part of this experience with me. So I did all that very intentionally. But I brought my mother along, even though my mother is the source of a lot of the pain I have. It's not her fault. Like, again, it's not her fault. But of course, that relationship between a child and their mother is kind of primal, right? So, but I wanted my mother to be with me. And I felt it. I felt all of these women and all of their losses. Oh my goodness. So much loss. Loss of children that were miscarried. Loss of parents that have died. Loss of parents that have left, abandoned people. There's been so much loss. My grandparents and great grandparents lived through the Depression, and just so much pain and struggle my family has had, especially the women. So I felt that very deeply. And I don't know why, but that made me feel better. As I'm talking about this, like, God, this is so sad. And it was sad. I used so much Kleenex, but it was sad, and it put some big puzzle pieces together. Like, it's not just me. It's not just my sadness. I was born with a whole bunch of sadness already. And then I got to add to it with my own sadness. But I don't have to hang on to it anymore. It doesn't have to be stuck to me like glue. It can be like, yes, I have this lineage of sadness and loss and grief. And I can have compassion for all of those women in my lineage and have compassion for myself and not have to live in it. Another piece that came up for me was my own loss of my infertility journey. You know, we adopted Joey after trying to get pregnant for like 2 years. And I don't think I ever really dealt with that loss, that grief, which was considerable. But, you know, then we're like, okay, on to the adoption thing. Okay. And turn the corner. Don't think about that horrible infertility time anymore. Now we're happy because we get to adopt this wonderful child. So the infertility piece just kind of got brushed over. So that came back really powerfully. It just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm not going to say that this psychedelic experience fixed everything, but it just brought everything right up to the front page. Like, hello, here it is. And so acknowledging that grief, that I wasn't able to have a child, my own child out of my own body. I was never able to breastfeed. I wasn't able to have that attachment with the child from prenatal, you know. This is the piece that Joey missed so badly because his birth mother was not trying to have him and not welcoming him, right? Even prenatally. And he didn't get that attachment. And then by the time I got him 7.5 months later, the train has passed. The train has passed the station, right? Kind of like in my vision. It's gone. I know we tried to attach as much as possible, but it's gone. So Joey and I both missed that attachment piece. And so maybe there's a whole nother podcast about infertility in here somewhere. I don't know. But so these big, big puzzle pieces just pulling together. And it felt so weird. Like, well, duh. That's, of course, why you've had this lifetime of feeling like this. And at first I felt kind of stupid. But then I was like, okay, no, not duh, but like, yes. Yes, there it is. There it's pulling together. There's the answers. There's the meta reasons, the overall big picture of what's going on here. Anyway, so we talked for a long time, kind of in this kind of woozy, I was still a little bit out of it state. And I was just, all of my emotions were so accessible. It was like the psilocybin just opened me up like a open book. Like, okay, here it all is. Nothing's hiding anymore. You know how in regular life you just put some stuff away, like hide that in a closet. Nope, that goes under the bed. I don't want to think about that ever again. That goes in a safe in the basement, right? So what the substance does is it makes you open and able to access some of those things that you're really not able to access in regular living. So that's what that was. And it still sounds sort of sad, doesn't it? But it wasn't sad to me. It was very revealing, very assuring. And it made me feel part of something much bigger than me. I guess that's that thing in the 60s and 70s, that peace and love, we're all one thing. It was sort of like that. Like, okay, I'm just a piece of this grief. I'm just a piece of it. And I'm carrying other people's grief and kind of this worldwide grief of misogyny and loss and pain that our world is filled with. I also had this vision earlier when I was kind of in that half sleep mode. I forgot. This was a very important vision. I imagined myself kind of going through this door or portal or something into this expanse of complicated, like lattice work or scaffolding. It was like a giant city, like bigger than anything you could imagine. And I was this tiny little piece. And I was like, see, I'm just nothing. I'm just this tiny piece. And whoever it is that you're communicating with on these journeys said, yes, you are just a tiny piece. And you are all of it. You are just a tiny piece and you are the whole thing. So I don't know what that means exactly. Obviously, it's very raw still. But when I feel like a tiny cog in the wheel, like, oh God, nothing I do matters. I'm just this tiny little thing. To think that I am also the whole universe. Like I am the drop in the ocean and I am the ocean. I think that's another thing that people say. It's so profound. It's so big and yet so basic. And I'm not sure how this is all going to work out. I'm not sure how this is going to flow down. So, okay. So that was, so I talked to John about that too. And just kind of went over that. And I knew I was coming out of it when I started becoming hungry. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I had to fast. I had to go into it fasting, which is not my forte. I love eating and I eat my 3 meals a day religiously. So that was kind of tough to be fasting, but I see why you just need to be kind of clear. And so the medicine could work probably too. So it wasn't interfering with trying to digest food. So, but I started getting very hungry. And so John brought me fruit and nuts and some water and left me alone for a while. I ate and ate and ate and ate and ate. And then slept a little bit. And then it was time to call Jan back. So she had been exiled all day so I could do this journey. And so she was able to come back and gave me a big hug. And I chose at that point not to just tell Jan everything because I still didn't understand it all. And I still don't. And it's very hard to put into words. So I decided not to try to make Jan understand this because I don't think she'll ever understand it. I don't think anyone will ever understand it. I don't know if I will. So I just enjoyed being with Jan. We ate dinner. We went to bed like at 8:00 because we were both exhausted and slept for 12 hours. Then the next day I had another therapy session with John, or integration session, I guess is what you would call it. Just kind of talking through what happened again. Now that I was clearer, I was back into my own head, and talked about, how to put this back into my life. And then we're going to have 2 more sessions in a week and in another week. And then I don't know what happens after that, if that will be the end of my journeys or I don't know. I don't know if I'll have more questions and then want to go back in. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this is all I needed. Aside from not seeing Joey there, it did meet my expectations. It exceeded my expectations. And it's been a couple of days since I've been back and I feel lighter than I felt in a long, long, long time. I don't know. It's this feeling of just relief, just lightness. It's hard to describe. And I feel more authentic. I feel more able to speak my mind and less cautious about saying the wrong thing or making someone mad or whatever. I'll probably make a lot of people mad now. Sorry, Jan. But I feel lighter. I hope to gradually decrease my antidepressants, and hopefully the goal is to get off of them altogether and to be able to manage my emotions more organically. I would like to get off of them after several decades of being on them. I would like to feel how I feel myself just by myself, raw, just plain. So, well, anyway, thank you for listening to this a little bit rambly monologue. And I wanted to just make sure and record my experience before I forgot it while it was still fresh and before I forgot all the details, and encourage people to kind of open your ears to what's going on in the world of therapeutic psychedelics. It's coming down the pike. It's coming. And it will be, if it's ever approved, to be legalized in our country, it will be legalized in this format, therapeutic format. You won't be able to buy it. Well, you still will be able to buy it underground, like my son still is doing. But the legal way will be through some sort of therapist, some sort of healthcare provider that will sit with you all day and do several sessions with you before and after. So it sounds like a great model to me. And if this gives me as much relief as I am hoping it gives me, it is worth like 10 years of therapy. I'm telling you, it put some big puzzle pieces together. Now, I had done a lot of work. So I think if a person hasn't done any work, it might not have this kind of effect. But I have done a lot of work on my inner self and trying to figure it out, trying to get better. And so I think all of that effort, all of my awareness has helped in this situation. So if you're on the path, if you're wanting to get kind of a jump start or a boost to your healing path, maybe therapeutic psychedelic journeys might be an option. Just putting it out there. A 53-year-old middle-aged white lady can do it, and it's a real thing. I hope it really helps me recover from depression. I really, really hope that I can put much of it behind me and live a happier, more authentic rest of my life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting Safe Home Podcast. We just really hope to get some of this information out there that nobody ever talks about. And by sharing our own personal stories, maybe people will be more brave to share their own or to try different modalities, try to explore healing in different ways. So all the best to all of you. Thank you so much and stay safe.